Gute Dag and welcome to PA Dutch 101. This is video 15 in our series, and we'll be covering the Pennsylvania Dutch words for family members, or as we say in Dutch, die Familie. This is a non-grammar based video. This is a good video for building vocabulary. And as I've been saying at the beginning of all my videos, if you have not seen the previous 14 videos, I would invite you to watch those first. It'll give you a good understanding of basically what we're doing today, especially with pronunciation. We're going to work on that with this new vocabulary. And it gives you a solid foundation in what we're doing and where we're going from here. But for right now, let's jump into family members. Okay? So, die Familie. Die Familie. Die Familie. So, one thing we need to know right off the bat, and this is actually very easy for us, all family terms in Pennsylvania Dutch use their corresponding genders. We talked about genders in previous video. It's really nice. If the person that you're talking about is a male person, is male, then they're masculine. If it's a female, then it's feminine. That's all you need to know. There's no tricks here, okay? Exactly what I just said. Male members masculine, female members are all feminine. I broke it down into the groups within our family. We'll give the Dutch word, I'll tell you what the English is, we'll practice saying it, and we'll just build your vocabulary that way. We're starting kind of at the top of our family tree, if we think of it as a family tree, starting with grandparents. The grandparents, which in Pennsylvania Dutch is die Grosseldere. Die Grosseldere. Die Grosseldere. Okay. And of course you have two that fall under that category. Grandfather, grandmother. Grandfather, der Großdaddy. Der Großdaddy. Der Großdaddy. Grandmother, die Großmutter. Die Großmutter. Die Großmutter. Now I'm going to have to take a time out here a minute and say something. Depending what part of Pennsylvania Dutch land you live in, or depending on what contact you come with other Pennsylvania Dutch speakers, there are other terms that are used depending where you live. I know for a fact that some people, instead of saying Großdaddy, will say Großvater. And some people, instead of saying Großmutter, might say Großmammy or Gremmem. There's many different names. Think about it in English. We have a lot of names other than grandmother. Some people say grandmom, some people say nana, some people say meemaw. I've heard that from time to time. In the part of Pennsylvania where I live now, everybody calls their grandmother Gram. So it's a little give and take here. These are the terms that I used growing up, so they're the ones that I'm passing on. And I know that in the part of northern Berks County where I grew up, these were the terms that I heard most commonly used. But just letting you know that there are other terms out there. And if you look up grandfather or grandmother in the dictionary that you have, you might see other variations listed. All of them are fair game. And if you walked into a situation and you used Großmutter and everybody in that conversation uses grandmom, they're still going to know what you mean. So don't feel like learning this limits you, okay? These are the ones that I'm instructing you in, but just be aware that there are other terms out there. Beneath our Grosseldere, then we just have our die Ältere. Die Ältere. Die Ältere. And that's the word for parents. And underneath our term parents, we have two of them. And here I'm giving you two common terms for father. Der Daddy. Der Daddy. Der Daddy. And der Vater. Der Vater. Der Vater. And again, it depends on who you're speaking to and maybe what region or what area they're from as to which one of the two they'll use. Same way with the word for mother. You might hear or use die Mutter. Die Mutter. Die Mutter. Or die Mami. Die Mami. Die Mami. Your parents then have Kinder. Die Kinder, die Kinder, die Kinder, which is the word for children in Pennsylvania Dutch. And then underneath that category we have two possibilities. Der Sohn, der Sohn, der Sohn, which is the word for son, and the word for daughter, die Tochter, die Tochter, die Tochter. So a basic small family would have all of these terms. Let's say them through one more time. Die Grosseldere, der Großdaddy, die Großmutter, die Ältere, der Daddy, der Vater, die Mutter, die Mami, die Kinder, der Sohn, die Tochter. Now we know that most of us, if not all of us, have much more or many more people in our families, so let's learn a couple more terms. There among son and daughter, you might have more than one, so you end up having a brother or a sister. So brother, der Bruder, der Bruder, der Bruder. Or sister, die Schweschder, die Schweschder, die Schweschder. Most of us have multiple of these as well, and you can probably figure out what they mean. They're very close to the English. Der Onkel, der Onkel, der Onkel. Of course, that's uncle and his wife. Die Aunt, die Aunt, die Aunt. Okay? We have two possibilities for a cousin in Dutch. The first one, I guess, would be maybe the older Dutch word for it. That is es Geschwisterkind. Es Geschwisterkind. Es Geschwisterkind. And you can also use the word cousin, use the English word if it's a male cousin, der cousin, if it's a female cousin, die cousin. Okay? I know a lot of people come from or have families that have divorces and so forth, so you might end up having Stief and Halb. Stief is step and Halb is half. So maybe you have a Stiefbruder, one word, that would be stepbrother, or an Halb Schweschder, half sister. So use these words to build other family terms. Also, a lot of us will have, if we're married, we will have in-laws. So the words for father-in-law and mother-in-law are der Schwerdaddy, der Schwerdaddy, der Schwerdaddy. And stepmother, die Schwermutter, die Schwermutter, die Schwermutter. We also might have brother-in-laws or sister-in-laws, so I'll give you that. The word for brother-in-law, der Schwäger, der Schwäger, der Schwäger. And sister-in-law, die Geschwai, die Geschwai, die Geschwai. Okay? And maybe if you're lucky enough and you're young enough and your great-grandparents are still alive, the word for great-grandfather, we could also substitute great-grandmother if we had to, der Großdaddy, der Großdaddy, great-grandfather, or die Großmutter, or die Großmummy, whichever word you use. Okay? So real quick, let's run through these one time. Der Bruder, die Schwester, der Onkel, die Aunt, es Geschwisterkind, that's a tough word to say, der or die cousin, that's an easy one. Stief, halb, der Schwerdade, die Schwermutter, der Schwäger, die Geschwai, and der Großdaughter. Okay? So we've covered all the family terms that I think you need to know. If there's a situation, there's a word that you want to know that I didn't cover in the video, I would suggest just looking it up in the dictionary. But let's practice, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time actually practicing and giving you examples. I have an idea for you to practice. This is what I would suggest you do after watching this video. Sit down and draw your family tree. Not the whole thing, just maybe, you and your brothers and sisters, then your parents, and then your grandparents, and maybe throw your uncles and aunts in there. And then when you have that on that paper in front of you, start creating sentences in Pennsylvania Dutch describing your family. I came up with a couple examples. Let's take your uncle. I came up with this sentence, uncle and aunt, actually. My uncle woont in Lancaster. Sy vrouw is my aunt. My uncle woont in Lancaster. Sy vrouw is my aunt. There's a great sentence describing not only one person in your family, but two. My uncle lives in Lancaster. His wife is my aunt. We could have also said something like what his name is, or what her name is. You know how to say all that. We've covered that in previous videos. Start practicing all the Dutch that we've learned. Here's another sentence you could draw, or you could write. Ich hab 5 cousins. Ich hab 5 cousins. I have 5 cousins. Maybe you do. Maybe you have more. There's another great sentence you could try. Or, using our numbers and thinking about the stuff that we've covered in previous videos, you could say something like this. My Großmutter ist 85 Jahre alt. My Großmutter ist 85 Jahre alt. My grandmother is 85 years old. You can do sentences like that. So there's a lot of possibilities you could do. The possibilities kind of are endless. You could come up with 3 sentences for each person on your family tree if you really wanted to practice. Sky's the limit, so to speak. It's a good way of practicing. And not only writing the sentences, then read them out loud. Find someone in your family or in your house and say, come on over here, I'm going to describe our family in Pennsylvania Dutch to you. It'll be not only great practice using your Dutch, but also speaking your Dutch. Might pique someone else's interest in your house who'd want to learn. They're thinking, oh man, you learned all this and you're able to say and describe our family tree in Pennsylvania Dutch? That's cool. I'd like to be able to do that too. And this is the way we're going to start spreading and getting our dialect back out there in the community and getting more people interested in learning. Because it is neat to be able to sit down with somebody and share what you know. And you're not only sharing the knowledge you have of the dialect, but if you are Pennsylvania Dutch or you come from a Pennsylvania Dutch family, you're sharing your culture. And our language is an extremely important part of our culture. Sadly, it's one of the parts that we're losing the most. We still have our food and we still have a lot of our traditions, but it's the language that we're losing. And we need to bring that back because it's a huge part of who we are. And so don't be afraid. I guess what I'm saying is don't be afraid to brag about your abilities and don't be afraid to speak Dutch. You might be surprised whose interest you pique. And then you might find a Pennsylvania Dutch buddy that you could practice with. You never know. Okay? Oh, one more, I'll throw this in there. My daddy, der James, is gross. There's one more sentence. My daddy, der James, is gross. My dad, James, is tall. Okay? So I went off on my soapbox a little bit there, but take what I said to heart, hopefully, or at least some of it. That's all for today. Again, in this video, we covered family terms. Get out there, practice, use them. Start calling your family members by their term in Dutch instead of saying brother. Next time you see your brother, call him, hey, Bruder. Or the next time you see your sister, say, hey, Schweschder. Catch them off guard. Never know. That's it for today. Bis die nächste Video. Macht's gut und schwätzt Deutsch.